everyone, and welcome back to the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Soup Kitchen. It's Gav, and you join us for the first time in over a month. We've had a big old break over Christmas and the New Year, but we're back with a bang. Sunderland, since we last recorded, they've done alright, haven't they? They were fourth in the table, a few points off automatic promotion, winning games. Isadore's back scoring goals. There's a new man coming in through the front door as the transfer window opens, and he seems to be quite the signing. We're going to talk about all this and more today. Joining me, as always, is Chris. Hello, mate. Welcome back.
Hello, Gavin. Yes, it has been. It's been a massive break, hasn't it? It feels like we haven't done one for donkeys. And I was wondering, at what point do you stop saying Happy New Year to someone?
I've seen people today and they've shook my hand and said Happy New Year.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. Do you wait until all the chocolate's gone out the house and...
We're over a week in.
I don't know. I mean, I've stopped saying it to people, but I'm going to be nice, aren't I, if someone says it to us and be like, Happy New Year. You all right?
Well, I don't know. I think if someone says it now, I'm like, it's getting on a bit now, isn't it? Are you going to keep saying that till March? Like for the first time you see people or what? You know, it's like...
Well, maybe once it stops being happy, like when Sunderland lose a game or something, because we've done all right so far this year. We've been pretty consistent in that regard, and we're all happy, aren't we? I mean, since the new year, we beat Sheffield United, we beat Portsmouth, we've got Stoke this weekend, so it's a very happy new year for Sunderland. And of course, as I mentioned in the intro there, looks like we've got a new player coming through the door, Enzo Le Fee, who I've never seen play in my life, apart from the obligatory YouTube clips where he looks like an absolute baller, whacking in free kicks like they know tomorrow,
on YouTube,
corner balls flying into the box and people scoring from them, and he just looks mint. But yeah, we've got lots to be positive about at the minute. And yeah, we've got an FA Cup game at the weekend, which I think will afford us our first look of Salis Abdul Samed, Chris Riggs' return to the squad. Possibly going to see Ahmed Abdullahi for the first time. Plenty to look forward to, I think. It's been a cracking new year.
It has. I mean, what a brilliant turnaround. And, you know, if we look back on last year as a calendar year, the 12 months, look, the first 6 months of that, and look at the turnaround since the summer, it's just been incredible, really, hasn't it? I mean, the whole club's just turned around since we made the changes in the summer. And we're kicking off, like you said, 2025, 2 wins out of 2, especially the big one against Sheffield United. And we've got, I mean, for me, the big ones, we're going to talk about the cup game, but for me, the big one's away to Burnley, the Friday after.
Yeah,
that's the huge one for me. And you're talking about bringing Rig back, and you're talking about, you know, bringing these players in. And I think for the players who are coming back long term and need some minutes on the pitch, I think it's perfect. But for someone like Rig, I'd kind of just leave him out. I'd just sit him out. I mean, I suppose the question we have to answer before, I mean, as we get into the game, is how much do we give a shit?
Well, I think the manager gives a shit. In his press conference on Thursday, he talked about how we're going to take it seriously. It's a game we want to win.
Yeah, but what else is he going to say?
He was asked once or twice about making changes, and he said, in so many words, he basically said, we've got a small group, consistency is quite important to us. We don't want to make loads of changes and lose that sort of momentum, consistency that we've got, which you can kind of understand. But at the same time, as I mentioned, you know, he did say that Rig will play. He did say Sam Ed will play, which will be good. Be a good chance to see him. Abdullahi might get some minutes. Again, someone we've not seen. Simon Moore will be pushing for a start because he didn't outrun to lose his place. And Dennis Sirkin hasn't started the last few, so he'll want to get on the pitch. You know, so there are a handful of players that where you've got to look at it and go, right, we've got to get them in somehow, figure them in. But in the main, I'd be looking at the likes of Isidore, I'd be looking at the likes of Bellingham, maybe even Dan Neil, Mepham possibly, and I would bring them out for this game. I think it's a balancing act, isn't it? You can't change everything, but there's justification to change maybe half of it, and then you know, see how it goes. Maybe if the game goes on and we're winning, you can bring them out and you can manage the game out a little bit. So it's not going to be wholesale changes, basically. We're going to probably see about 5, 6 maybe.
Well, isn't there some, I don't know there is in the league, but isn't there some restrictions on how many changes you can make, or can you do as many as you like in the cup?
That does ring a bell, but I don't know. I think you make as many as you like.
I can't remember. But the thing is, you're just saying there, you're like, oh, well, the manager cares, he's up for it and all this, but we're talking about changing half the team. So does that not already suggest you don't give a shit?
We don't know what he's going to pick. I mean, the only ones he basically talked about in his press conference was Sam Ed, Rig, Abdullahi. So if he made 3 changes, that's not a great amount.
Okay, so what about you?
For me, I'm not bothered. Yeah. I would quite happily change the full team. I'm not. I'm I'm looking forward to seeing Samed. I hope we get to see Abdullahi. To be honest, I would like to see Trey Ogasunyi play, who I think's had a cracking season so far at youth level. I'm happy for them to just bring everyone out because we're stretched. We've got some really big... I mean, after this, we've got Burnley away.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We need the best players fit for that
Exactly.
game. Maybe that's just him being cute and clever and
Yeah, but
saying that
he
to the
has
press
to say
without
that.
giving too much away.
He has to say that. And for a start, I mean, imagine, the club's got a home cup tie. They want to obviously get a half-decent crowd in because everyone's buying their tickets.
Well, I bought mine today and it's definitely not going to be a half-decent crowd.
No, but there's not.
Because they've only opened up, I think it's went from the east stand up to the southeast corner. So, yeah, I know what you mean, though.
But
it's not going to be a great crowd.
Imagine the slap he would get off the club if he turned around and went, nah, I don't give a shit about this. It's crap.
Yeah.
I mean, of course he's going to say it, but... I mean, to put it kind of into perspective, the club, I mean, I started going to let a few things out the bag for the preview, for those who might bother reading it on match day.
You always say this,
I know.
You've got legions of loyal readers, Chris, who tune in just to see what you've got to say on a match day.
For those 3 people who read the preview on a match day.
Are 3 people a legion? I don't know if that counts.
Well, it is in this case. I'll say it is in this case.
I'll read it anyway, so I'm at least one person.
Well, there you go then. Well, I'd say I'm giving you some kind of inside information here. But, I mean, it's probably no surprise to anybody, but it kind of slips under the radar because when I started thinking about this, I was like, right, okay, 3rd round of the FA Cup, it's background. I used to always love it. I mean, I'm going back to, I remember, kind of when I was young and Wrexham beating Arsenal and all this. I loved the 3rd round of the FA Cup. I loved this weekend.
I thought you were going to say Hereford beating Newcastle.
Well, I'm not that old. I know. I mean, I've scored. Don't get us wrong. I've seen the Ronnie Radford goal about 500 times because,
You'll have been about 10 then, were you?
You've knocked us. You've took us right off being feeling old. And I'm going to sound old now because the 3rd round of the FA Cup's got a completely different feel about it now. I mean, you go back to Man United pulling out for the World Club Championship. I mean, that pretty much kind of, for a lot of people, killed the FA Cup. And it's never been the same. And I honestly believe that. And the 3rd round of the FA Cup was I couldn't wait for it. And now it's almost like this game coming up and the 2 weeks in between league games, it's starting to feel now like an international break. Where I'm like, oh, God. And then I keep thinking, oh, we haven't got a game. And then I'm thinking, oh, well, we have, but we haven't. And I can't, it's like, it feels like a lost weekend. But going back to, again, to put it in perspective with the FA Cup and talking about our recent record with it, I mean, we've been awful for a long time in the FA Cup and cups in general. And I was looking, here's one for you. Since the 2016 FA Cup, so in January 2016, when the 3rd round kicked off, we played Arsenal at the Emirates under Sam Allardyce, and we lost 3-1. So including that one, we've taken part in 9 FA Cup campaigns since that one, and we've played 15 games, including replays. How many do you think we've won?
Oh, 14?
We've won 2 out of 15 games. So we've actually, since 2016, we've won 2 FA Cup ties. So we've only progressed to the next round twice.
What year were those, by the way?
Well, I was just about to ask you. They're so spectacular. Can you even remember them?
No.
Well, exactly. So,
did we play? That was the League Cup when we got through and got Arsenal, wasn't it? That time in League One. Nah.
So we beat Portvale 2-1 in the first round in 2018-19, and then.
Who scored in that game?
I'm sure didn't Catmull score one? I'm sure Catmull scored one.
Maybe.
But anyway,
I remember being on telly.
And then in 2023, we beat Shrewsbury 2-1, the same scoreline in the 3rd round. Because then we went on to play Fulham and we drew there, and then we got beat. So only twice since 2016 have we progressed to like the next round. And I was looking as well. I was going a bit further back. So since 1973, when we won it, we've only reached the quarterfinal or gone beyond the quarterfinal 5 times since 1973.
Jeez.
We got the quarterfinal in 76, final in 92, semi in 2004, and then 2 quarterfinals in 2012 and 2014. And so 5 times since 1973, we've got to the quarterfinal or beyond. I mean, our cup record is pretty dire, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, and part of me, I mean, when we're in situations like this, because if you think about like this, where the club have been, I mean, my frustration probably goes back to Peter Reid's era, and maybe if you look at been, the couple of years where Steve Bruce was doing all right and we might have had a go at the cup. But apart from those two eras, we've always been fighting for promotion or fighting to stay up. So we've had bigger fish to fry. So like the cup's just been like this, sod it. And I think, again, this season we've got bigger fish to fry. And if we do, because we've got the talent and we've got the team actually who could pull off it. If we get past Stoke and even, we get a couple of decent draws and then maybe meet a bottom half Premier League team, we could potentially have a decent run. But in my mind, I don't want one. I don't want a distraction this season. The amount of injuries were picked up without cup runs, and you stick, important cup games in there where, don't get us wrong, there's a possibility it might give us a bit of momentum. But I mean, I remember the cup run in '92, where actually the cup run completely knocked us off league form completely. We couldn't win a game. We couldn't get any points in the league. We were awful. As soon as the cup came around, brilliant. Completely turned around. We were a different team. And I just think we've got bigger things this season than the FA Cup. And I'm struggling to, there's a small part of me that thinks, yeah, it'd be good fun to have a cup run. They're always good. But I just don't want any more distractions or any more opportunities for injuries.
Yeah, you mentioned the one in 2004.
Yeah.
And that was, we got the playoffs that year, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
So, I mean, we have had a good cup run alongside a decent league run, but then in both instances we fell. So, we should, that still hurts me, by the way, that one with
McAtee, yeah.
Millwall was shit and we were good.
McAtee's red card.
Hadn't we beaten them just before as well, like in the league? And fucking Tim Cahill, first of many goals against Sunderland. Yeah, that was a sore one. And it was at Old Trafford. So we didn't even get to have at the time, Wembley was still a novelty, wasn't it? It'd been, 6 years since we'd been to Wembley at that point. So we didn't even get to go to Wembley. But had we beat Millwall that day, we would have been in Europe. Because Millwall, who were terrible, fighting it out at the bottom end of the Championship, the next season we're playing in the UEFA Cup.
Yeah.
And that could have been us. And it wasn't, and I got robbed of an away day in a European city. But never mind.
But who's to say we couldn't maybe get in the automatic spots that season?
Well, that's true.
And then we had a cup run. Because we did the cup run have an impact. But this is what I mean. I mean, if your whole purpose of the season is to get up, get promoted, where does the cup run fit in?
Like this game, we're playing Stoke. We've just lost to them. The manager want to put that right, even though it's a completely different competition. You want to put that right just to stay winning. Then, like you said before, you get past Stoke, maybe you win 1-0, 2-1 or something, I don't know. Next round, you get a tough Premier League team, but you go away and you fare pretty well, but you get beat. You don't really lose anything from that, and you probably gain a little bit. Actually, you mentioned that Fulham doubleheader that we had a few seasons ago. Off the back of that, we were really confident because we came out of that game, that little run, and we were like, we can hang with a decent Premier League team. Like, we look good. And I actually thought off the back of that, we benefited from that as a result. But then Ross Stewart got injured,
I was just about to say, there you go.
Yeah.
I was just about to say. So we get past Stoke, we get a bottom half Premier League team, we go for it. And then one of, let's say Bellingham, Rig, I don't know, whoever, or Isidore, a goal scorer who's in form, he gets injured for the rest of the season. It's that type of thing. It's just... It's kind of where do you stand? I mean, what you started off with saying though, if it's an exercise to say, well, look, we've got almost an 11 who are chomping at the bit and are not getting minutes on the pitch in competitive football. I mean, if we use it for that exercise, I think brilliant. It's a free hit, and then if we get past Stoke, chuck them in again, and then see where we go with that. I mean, to get players minutes, I think it's probably a good exercise. If he goes in with the starting, the starting 11 that he would go in with Burnley. I don't know, that kind of has risks. Do you want to weigh them up against dropping 3 points against promotion contender? I don't know. It's just, it's a tough one. Like you said, it's a balancing act. And it's one of these that, I mean, can the manager really win this weekend? Can he win if, let's say he puts the starting 11 out and we win? People aren't going to be like, thinking, oh, it's fantastic, we're through the fourth round. And if he changes everything and then loses, people might go, oh, he shouldn't have rotated it that much and all this sort of stuff. I don't know, it just feels like a bit of a lose-lose, and I don't know, it's just a strange feeling about it.
What would you do if you were him then? Let's cast our sort of minds to the team, like, Who do you bring in?
I'd look at the squad and just bring in players who I think need minutes.
So Simon Moore comes in goal then,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah.
I mentioned Dennis Serkin before for Elise.
Yeah.
Would you start him in this one? Like, bear in mind, Burnley away, I would say suits Adji Elise more.
Yeah.
And he's been okay, actually. And Serkin's last couple of games hasn't been great. I would give Dennis Serkin the chance in this one. So there's 2 changes.
I wouldn't risk Serkin with his arm.
No? So who would you play?
Well, I'd have Yelder in there, but then, who do you play centre half?
That means you've got to start 09 and Mepham, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Keep Elise in and save Serkin for Burnley away. I don't know. I've got a feeling we'll keep Elise in for Burnley just because it's away.
Yeah. Serkin likes pushing on, and I think away from home. I think it's one of these changes he likes doing though, because it really kind of gives us a different dynamic depending on who's playing on left back. Late in the game, if you want shoring up, he brings Serkin off, he puts Elise on. If it's the opposite and we might need a goal, Serkin comes on, Elise comes off. Mm-hmm. So he completely changes our left-hand side depending on the circumstances.
I think Serkin will play this one. I think Yelder starts instead of Mepham. I think Luke 09 plays just because he will. Right back, Hume will stay in because we've got nobody else.
Mm.
Midfield, then that's when it gets a bit more interesting. Samed, we already know is going to play.
Yeah.
Chris Rigg looks like he's going to be back in the team for that one. Alexic, now, interestingly, I know it's not his position, but he's been coming on the left. But I've got a sneaking feeling he'll start in the middle. The only thing is, really, Dan Neil being the captain, would he drop him? He probably could do with the time out the team, just give him a little break ahead of Burnley. So midfield 3 of Samed, Alexic and Rigg, never played together, but still a lot of quality there.
Yeah.
And then the front 3 is where I'm not sure, because what do you I think Isidore's got to come out.
Yeah, definitely.
So Mayenda potentially starts through the middle, but then that leaves out Rusin and Conley, who I don't think have got a future. There's Triagosunyi, who wants a chance.
Mm.
What, who starts on the left, who starts on the right, who goes... It's hard,
definitely,
that one.
Definitely could see him coming in. Rusin, I think he'd probably start Rusin, because it's one of these things where it's kind of... He's probably knocking on the door saying, I deserve, a few minutes at least. And obviously it all depends what he's like in training. If he's kind of chins on the floor and he's kicking up a stink, then obviously he's not. But if he's putting the graft in and he's carrying on and he's pushing for it, then there's a chance he'll start, and probably out wide, because I think keep Mayenda in a position where he's in front of goal and he can get in the right positions, because that's where you want him to be next Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Keep him kind of hungry in front of goal, roosting out wide maybe. But yeah, I mean, it's one of these where I think just the manager's got to look around his squad and just try and the players. This is the thing as well. The players who've been playing week in, week out, they're more than likely carrying knocks. So it's these,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of them might have been carrying knocks for 3, 4, 5 weeks. You just don't know. The manager's got to weigh all this up and say, well, look, you've been carrying a knock, so now is a chance for you to have 2 weeks off and just get yourself right for that Burnley game. So it's a tough one. I mean, we can go through the names and we can say it, and I just think every position's up for grabs. For as far as I'm concerned, if I was the manager, I'd say anybody kind of who's not getting the minutes, who's fit, who's chomping at the bit. There's every chance they could come in with it if they've got the right attitude, because you don't want to reward someone who's, like I said, kicking up a stink on the training ground. But everything else, it's anybody who's been carrying knocks, bring them out, give them a couple of weeks. It's like Rigg saying he might come in, more than likely will. But I'm not sure I would. I'd give him another couple of weeks. I'd say, get yourself really kind of raring to go, get yourself properly fit. You think about his age as well. Are you that desperate to bring someone in that and keep playing games while he might be still carrying a knock? Yeah, it's just all these things he's got to think about. I'd make tons of changes.
The other thing, I guess, is what the players think. I'm sure with Enzo Le Fee coming in, that Rigg will want to play. Alexic will want to play. They'll all want to play to prove themselves,
of course. No, but they all want to play anyway.
They've got competition coming in.
They should all want to play anyway. I mean, that's the whole point. That's what they're here for. They're all, especially, you're talking players who haven't been involved. I always remember, going back to Peter Reid when, those first 2 seasons at the Stadium Light when players couldn't get in. Every time someone got a chance and came in for someone, you could tell that they thought, right, because they were desperate to play in that team, that were doing well and getting momentum and winning game after game. And when they got a chance, they were on it, because they thought, right, if I do the business here, I'm in this team at the top of the league, enjoying myself, full houses at the Stadium of Light. And all these players at the club want to be playing because it's one of those seasons where surpassing expectations and the atmosphere is going to be brilliant and everyone wants to play. So it's, the players who are carrying knocks who I'd want to take out, they'll be chomping at the bit, so they'll want to play. So that's what he gets paid for, managing the squad.
You excited to see this new guy, Enzo Le Fee? I know I've mentioned him a couple of times. Looks like that deal's over the line, loan with a obligation to buy, providing we get to the Premier League, and it's a lot of money. All of the rumours, or I say that the journalists on the sort of Italian side, they're saying we're covering his full wages, which will be a significant amount, considering he signed for Roma for 19 million just in the summer. Are you excited about this one? Because I'll be honest, never heard of him. Like I said at the top, never heard of him. But I think the hype around this is impossible to ignore. Like, it can't just be tons of people pretending they know who he is and how good he is.
Yeah.
It genuinely feels like we've pulled off a massive piece of business here, potentially.
So that's 3. I'm now looking forward to seeing play because you've got the striker. I can't remember his name now.
Abdullahi.
That's it. I was just trying to get you to say it because I know what you like.
Yeah, I've had enough time to get used to that name.
and Samed, like you said, I mean, it is a strange one with paying his full wages, but they've probably weighed it up and thought, if we signed a player now of that class, obviously it's going to cost us a hell of a lot of money. And if we don't go up, we don't necessarily still want them on the wages. So
yeah.
If we spend that much now, it's like a new signing, but for 6 months. So we might, how somebody can do the maths and tell us how much that'll be. But if that comes to, let's say, I don't know, a few million, is that worth the risk to say, we'll buy this almost cracking player for 2-3 million, however much his wages are going to come to in the next 6 months. And then if we go up, we don't mind splashing the cash, bring him in permanently and take those wages on. But if it doesn't work out and we don't go up, clearly they see that signing as almost, well, instead of spending 10 million or 8 million or whatever on a new player, bring him in and you kind of mitigate the risk. So it makes sense to do that. It's a hell of a lot of money. But as people keep saying, we're not kind of spending huge amounts. So this is a big signing. This is a huge signing. I mean, in terms of status and finances. So, yeah, of course. I mean, someone that Roma are going to spend 20 odd million on. And it was funny because I was there was an article that I was reading saying that if we do sign him in the summer, it will be the 6th biggest transfer by a newly promoted club if we do go up to the Premier League. So it just tells you kind of where the board are, and it's a proper signal that we're sending out, going after someone like that. And people have been talking about, and I've kind of been talking about as well on previous pods, that we've been doing really well, and we've been I think we're overachieving at the minute with the squad we've got. And they're all talented players, don't get us wrong. I think we've got some fantastic players. I just think, you weigh up the experience in the squad and you weigh up some other things in there. I just think that we are overachieving. And you look at where we were last season, with not far off the same team, really, when you go through them. Obviously you've got 2 or 3 in there, but more or less the spine of last season who, struggled at the back end of last season. And the fact that we are overachieving and the board now are doing deals like this, it's a proper signal to send out and say, we're in this. I mean, especially to those 3 clubs who have got Premier League players who they've signed for big money still on their books. And, we're going out and doing the same because we're in a different place to those 3 teams, where they've spent big money in recent years. They've brought big money in for selling players. We haven't been through that process. So we've built from, getting players in cheap or who've been injured or it hasn't gone right for them. And this seems like another one on paper who looks like a fantastic player in terms of playing the top flight in France. Hasn't worked out at Roma, but we've said this umpteen times that you go back through our transfers. This is why these type of brilliant players end up coming to Sunderland, because it hasn't gone right. And the club are doing brilliant to see through their recent kind of, well, if you like, for want of a better word, failure, and saying, well, that doesn't make them a bad player. They're still a good player. We've just got to find it, and we've got to get that back. And how many players have we got where we've done that?
I think our sort of recruitment policy in general is quite predatory. Actually, we wait for weakness and we exploit it.
Yeah,
like this guy, for instance, signed for Roma, big money, had been at Rennes, did well, prior to that had been at Lorient with Regis Le Bris and was his best player. I mean, people will have heard us say on here that when he was at Lorient, when he had them flying in the top flight in France, that he had players sold from under him and it all went to shit. This was his best player.
Yeah.
And he was sold from under him and they got relegated. Now, he's ended up at Roma. Roma have had 3 managers already this season. They're a basket case. They're a mess. So the manager who signed him's no longer there. The current manager, you'll not believe this, is Claudio Ranieri, who's 74-year-old now.
But they had someone in between. I think they've had like 3.
He's the guy who's at Southampton now.
Yeah.
The guy who's at Southampton now was the second manager who, I mean, I don't know if you've seen him, but that's not the guy you appoint when you try to avoid relegation. No. Like, bit dour.
I mean, where's Big Sam when you need him?
Yeah, but when I say predatory, that's what we've been. We've seen a reason to exploit this. Now, the thing which gives me so much reassurance, not just because everyone's telling us how brilliant a signing this is, he's worked with our manager before. There's one guy who knows about him, it's Regis Le Bris. That tells you everything. I don't think we make this signing without him. I mean, I saw a quote today. It was from, I think it was in the Echo, and the Echo had spoke to a French football expert who had claimed that he'd spoken to Le Fee's or Le Fee's, I'm going to have to get you to pronouncing that. I think it's Le Fee. Le Fee's agent, who had told him that once he had heard of Sunderland's interest, there was nowhere else he was going to go. Now, he's got clubs in the top flight of in Spain. I want to say Real Betis were in for him. There was another club too. Various clubs have been chasing him who were all placed higher in their league than where we are now. And he wanted to come to Sunderland. So this just feels like a really good piece of business. But time will tell. Look, he might end up being a flop. I'm just happy that this is happening now. I don't know. I want to bring this up as well, but the timing is curious. We haven't waited. We've got this one over the line. We've paid the money. You mentioned before to sign from the owners that we're being serious. Also, we've got some big games on the horizon. We've got Burnley coming up.
Yep.
We've got Borough coming up at the start of February. If we're signing good players, we need them for the big games because those are massive games in terms of where we are in the league. We win both them games. We could well be in the top 2 going into a run of games against sort of Watford, Luton, Leeds, So I think it's important if you're going to make moves like that, you get them in. There will be other business towards the back end of the window, but to me, if a player of that quality is available and you think you can get them, sometimes you've got to push the boat out. Now, the one that stuck in my mind was this time last year, we needed a centre forward. Kiefer Moore was available. We all knew he was in for him. The club could have pushed the boat out to get him, and we weren't in a position where we were going to get promoted, and they didn't. And he went to Ipswich, and Ipswich did get promoted. But that was a sign then that they didn't think we had the ability to kick on. I think now they do. We might sign another couple of players like this, Players who are real difference makers.
You're right about the timing because I was just kind of looking there, and we're talking about the Burnley game again. But from the Burnley game, if you look, we've got something like 9 games in 5 weeks. So we've got Burnley, Derby, Plymouth, Borough, Watford, Luton, Leeds, Hull, Sheffield Wednesday between the 17th of January and the 1st of March. I mean, so that's it. I mean, so you really, because once those games start coming in, obviously it's just, you're just rattling off every 2 or 3 days for 5 weeks. And that's kind of the proper business end of the season, that. I mean, and then you bring in your players before those games really kind of kick off and that run gets going. Because then someone has to come in. If you're doing it last week of January, I mean, all right, circumstances might dictate that you just have to, fair enough. But if you can do it before then somebody doesn't just have to hit the ground running when you're playing every 2 or 3 days. And you've got 5 solid weeks. And how many injuries are we going to pick up during that time? And you can guarantee we're going to pick them up. So you look at our midfield options. If we get Samad fit, get some minutes into his legs in the cup game, and we'll go into that run of 5 weeks, 5 solid weeks of pretty much non-stop midweek games, and we get those options ready, then we're in a decent place. So it looks like when we're talking about them being serious, yes, okay, that's a signal of intent in terms of the finances, but getting the squad ready for that sort of run and then the running after that. I mean, because he's going to need options. Because we're looking around now thinking, well, if you look past the injuries, actually, there's we're looking at the bare bones. Because I started looking when you was talking about who can he bring in. Once you go past the injuries, you're into all the younger players. There's not, because we've got that many injuries at the minute, amount of options we can bring in. And, when, like say, Riggs going to pick up a few more injuries because he's going to, he's going to be getting kicked more and more because, teams know about him now. So, yeah, I mean, it can only be a good thing that we're bringing in more options. I mean, potentially another striker, but we'll see what that is. But we've still got one who hasn't played, who we signed in the summer. So, if we can get him fit, then that's going to be like a new signing. And again, these two players who haven't played, who signed in the summer, it's exactly what we're talking about. Two players who we wouldn't have, if they were completely fit and didn't have injury problems, they wouldn't be at Sunderland.
Well, that was it. We signed both of them injured.
Yeah.
Samed, I think I've said this a few times, I think the only reason we got him was because he was injured. Because I think his club knew they weren't going to really have him for very long. I said exploitative, predatory, whatever you want to call it, but we've seen an option there to get a player in who ordinarily we wouldn't have available to us. Yeah. He was playing, I think he played 6 games in the Champions League last season. Mm. I mean, you get him fit, you get Le Fée up to speed, you've got Rig coming back from injury, you've got Dan Neil, who's in the form of his life at the minute, you've got Joe Bellingham, who's probably been our best player this season. What a midfield we've got. Add to that, Milan Alexic, who every time I've seen him, he's impressed us. Mm. He's going to get minutes. Adilo Shisha's sort of found his way back in the team and playing pretty well. You go on and on. All of a sudden, we've got all these options opening up as soon as people become fit and get up to speed. And it just feels like that this is all sort of motoring at the right time. If Samad can get through this game and impress, he's an option for the Burnley game straight away. If he's as good as we believe he is, a Champions League footballer who plays international football for Ghana, who was playing at the top end of the French league literally last season and the season before, he's an option for the Burnley game. And then you're like, bloody hell, look at the team Sunderland have got. And by the way, that's happening while we're in a decent run and we're picking up points. So, look, we've talked about the Stoke game a lot. I would like to win it purely to keep the momentum going into Burnley, but if we don't win, I'm not going to be bothered. Mm. Really, the league's the most important thing from this point. You mentioned it before. I think actually the manager said this in his press conference, but we've only got 1-2 game week this month left. We've got obviously the Burnley game, the Derby game following up after that. So, in terms of midweek, as this month's not too bad. They're quite nicely spaced out, and then after that, that's when it starts getting a bit busier again.
From the Burnley game, that's when it all kicks off.
We've got time to breathe now, and that's maybe the time to make these deals. And I'm just excited to see who we bring in, because I think this is a real, as you said, a real sign of intent. Yeah. We're bringing in a player as good as this. I think that's the club showing the hand to the rest of them and saying, look, I don't care what you're up to, but we're serious about this. We can finish in the top 2. We're telling players we can do it. We're bringing in players who think they'll be playing in the Premier League with Sunderland next season. Let's go, And I think it's really exciting. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I mean, even like you look past these signings, I thought the Sheffield United game was us basically screaming at the other 3 and telling them that we're in this. Because I think until then, and I think, to be honest, I think I've thought this as well, that you look at the other 3 teams, you look at Sheffield United, you look at Burnley, and you look at Leeds, and on paper, and I think most other things, we're not quite there. We're not quite in their bracket. We are just behind them, to be fair, but we're not quite there. And I think everybody's just thought at some point we're probably going to drift away from them, but we're probably the better or the best of the pack that's chasing them. But you were expecting those 3 I certainly was expecting those 3 to just kind of, bomb on, and we gradually just kind of lose ground on them. But that Sheffield United game was massive because it was us screaming at them, just saying, we're in this, and we're in this with you 3, and we're not kind of letting go of you. We're kind of keeping you within, 3 or 4 points. We're keeping you there, and we're going to kind of hang on your coattails. But these type of signings in January could change the mentality of that completely, where it's not just, we're going to hang on to your coattails, but it's now, right, we're as good as you now because we've brought in these extra players. We've got more options in midfield. We've got players who hopefully, I mean, touch wood and all this, if they're as good as they have been in the top flight in France or wherever, or like you said, being able to be good enough to play in the Champions League, if these players come in and play as they can at the level they've played at in the past, then you're talking about us going from being a team who's hanging on to these three sides to really mixing it and getting involved, and then taking one of those top two spots. We could completely change the psychology of it in this January window. And like I said, I think it started with that Sheffield United win, which was massive. But these signings then really, they're going to make those other three clubs really take notice of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been fun, mate. Good way to get back into it. We've talked about all positive things. Nothing to feel flat about at the minute until we get battered on Saturday. We'll be back with a bang.
I didn't even mention with Stoke, we've played them 3 times in the space of a month, and they've had a different manager every single time.
Yeah, I heard that mentioned today. Yeah. Interesting. Mark Robbins is in there now, so maybe his fringe players will be looking to impress. I don't know if he'll take it.
He'll be desperate to win it because they need some. They could only draw against Plymouth, and that was he should have won that one. And he's I think it was his first game, wasn't it? And they drew against Plymouth at all, and he should have won that. He'll be desperate to get some momentum, and if he gets it in the cup, because he had a couple of decent cup runs with Coventry.
Got the semi-final last year, didn't the Coventry?
Well, that's in the FA Cup, but I think. When he first took over, when he went in the second time, didn't he win the EFL trophy when he went in there? So, I mean, I think he's going to see this as a way to get them building some momentum and getting going, but I don't really give a shit.
Well, we don't give a shit, but we'll be talking about it after the match. We'll be back with another pod.
Yeah, I'll be pissed off about it if we get beat, but I don't give a shit.
Well, I'll be one of the 20 people taking part in attending that game. There's going to be nobody there, but I'll be there. So yeah, we'll be back with the pod after that. Make sure you catch it. Since we haven't talked since the start of December or whatever, I just want to say thank you to everybody who supported the fundraiser for the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen this year. We raised over £43,000 in total. 20,000 of that came from the sales of the Mackem cookbook. So massive thanks to Paul Swinney and Martin McFadden from A Love Supreme for all their work on that. We also had the sales of the Chris Riggs socks, which were kindly put together by Sock Council, Reuven Fletcher over there. Reuven, thank you very much. But yeah, thank you everybody who supported the fundraiser. It means a lot. And we'll be back next year with a bang once again, rattling our tins, asking people to contribute. It's a massive cause. It's a brilliant cause. But yeah, thank you for everyone. And there's a piece on the website with Andrea this week from the Soup Kitchen, just saying thanks to everybody. So check that out if you did donate, because it would, I'm sure it'll put a smile on your face. It's great. And thank you everyone for contributing to that. That just leaves me to say, see you later, Chris. Thank you very much, mate.
No bother. We'll speak after this epic cup time, I'm sure.
We will. And cheers to the listeners. We'll catch you later.